Hello, dear friends. Shavua Tov. It was Parashat Ki Tetze this past Shabbat. And I'll say a few words I said in the Beit Knesset in the synagogue today on Shayarot. Well, first of all, one unusual thing about this Parashat Ki Tetze, it starts with a war and it ends with a war. It starts with Ki Tetze le'milchama lo'ovecha, and you shall go to war with your enemy. Unetano Hashem Elokecha biyadecha v'shavita shivyo, which could be a condition, mean, and God gave you your enemy in your hands, and you took captives. But many of the Farshim say no. It's to tell you that in the land of Israel, when you go out to war and you are justified, God will give you this victory. And then, of course, it continues on with a specific story. And the end of the Parsha talks about the battle with Amalek, the iconic nation which represents the ultimate of evil, which means they wanted to decimate you for no particular reason. They weren't living in the area. It wasn't about land. It was just to show that you're not who you think you are. No particular reason to the war with Amalek. And Amalek becomes the representative, the symbol of evil in all the generations that we have to battle. And hopefully this is a siman, this is a sign that we're coming towards the end of this war. It's been quite difficult. Not only the battle itself, but all the slander and attempts around the globe to somehow connect us to things that we did not do. All we're doing is defending ourselves. Anybody who understands how life works here in the land of Israel, and you'll only know it if you come to visit, and how the army is really a people's army of regular people who go out to save their country in times of peril, something I don't think which exists in any other country in the world in this way. Then you'll understand that all of the things that certain media things are trying to attribute to us don't even make sense. Okay, that's all I wanted to say, and may God's victory be soon for his people. Dear friends, in Parashat Ki Tetze, we have an interesting mitzvah, which is called the bird's nest. And I'll read to you, this is Deuteronomy chapter 22, Varim 22, Parashat Ki Tetze. If it should happen that you come across a ken sipor, a bird's nest, and it's on the way or in a tree or on the land, and you see small birds, or you see beitzim, which are eggs in the nest, and the mother is on top of them, over the chicks or over the eggs. You shall not take the mother. You shall not take the mother and the children together. You have to send the mother away, it says in the next verse. And then you can take the offspring, and this you must do, leman yitavlach, so that it'll be good for you, v'harachta yamim, and you shall prolong your days. Now, first of all, what is this mitzvah? It's a mitzvah, and Maimonides says this is a mitzvah which we're trying to learn compassion. Where you see an egg, the eggs in a nest, don't just take the eggs and push away the mother. First, send the mother away. She doesn't have to see who's taking the eggs. And after that, take the eggs. This is something which is, of course, we do until this day. Now, this is one of the two places in the Torah where a mitzvah is mentioned, a commandment, where it promises long days, harach dayamim, a long life. The other one is in the Decalogues. In both Decalogues, both in Shmot, in Exodus, and Deuteronomy, here in the 5th chapter of Varim, it also says about kabed et avicha v'et imecha, honor your father and your mother, leman yarichun yamecha, in order to prolong your days. So there are two mitzvot in the Torah which talk about prolonging days. However, there are other places where it talks about things that can prolong your days. For instance, in Deuteronomy chapter 11, in the Shema, it says that if you keep the mitzvot in general, Laman yerbuya mechem v'imei b'nechem. This will multiply your days and the days of your children. Al ha'adamah shebarach Hashem, on the land that God has promised you. So there it doesn't say prolong, it says we'll multiply the days, but it sounds like the same idea. And then there's a third place, or you might say if you take those two, there's also a fourth place, but it's a third term, which is in Exodus, Shemot chapter 23, in Mishpatim, also talking about in the land. It says, Et mispar yamecha amalei, I shall fill the days of your lives. Also an interesting way. It's a different way of saying it, but it's understood to mean you'll have a long life. That's the way the Chizkuni understands it too. So I'd like to understand, first of all, what are these three terms, which I'll get to eventually. But before that, I want to talk about an interesting discussion about the question of Ha'arach Yamim. What does it mean to prolong your days? What is Ha'arach Yamim? What exactly does it mean? So what then is Laman Yarichun Yamecha? Now, in simple terms, it means that you'll have a long life. And this is the way it was also stood in this week's Tanchuma. In fact, on this week's Tanchuma, the Midrash Tanchuma says there are 248 parts to the human body, to the male body actually, and this represents the 248 positive mitzvot. And for every mitzvah that person does, it gives blessing. And he quotes this week's Parsha, if you do Shiluach HaKen, if you send away the mother bird before taking the eggs or the chicks, then you get prolonged life. And of course, if you honor your parents, you get prolonged life. And it says that also if you do Hachnasat Orchim, if you are hospitable and let people, especially people into your house, or especially people who are needy into your house, so it gives you blessing of children, because Sarah got the blessing of children when Abraham let guests into their house, etc. It gives a whole list of things. So the Tanchuma takes it very, very, I would say, very literally, that these things give blessing in life in various ways, and this is an example of it. So as I said, it takes it seriously. That would mean Arichut Yamim. You know, there somebody once said that if why is it that in North America, and specifically, we have a custom when somebody is saying Kaddish on a yard site, for a parent, we say, may you have a long life. Somebody say, why do you say, may you have a long life, specifically on this? And the answer I heard was, well, if it says in the Torah that you're going to have a long life if you honor your parents, so we say here, you're honoring your parents by fulfilling this mitzvah of the Kaddish in their memory, of reciting the Kaddish. May this merit you the long life that the Torah talks about when you honor your parents, which is interesting. Now, this seems to be contradicted by a story which is brought both in Chagiga and in Kiddushin. And the story goes that there was a man who was walking with his son, and he said to his son, I want you to go up the tree, because I see there's a bird's nest. I want you to shoo away the mother bird and take the eggs, So the boy went up the tree, and he shooed away the mother bird. Before he was able to take the eggs, he fell off the tree and died. And the Talmud says that Elisha ben Avuya, which was the, you might say, the scholar of the Mishnah who went off the path, who kafar ba'ikar, turned away from the right path. So it says Elisha ben Avuya saw this, and he said, how can this possibly be? This boy was able to, he basically fulfilled two commandments, both honoring his father and sending away the mother bird. Both of them promise a long life, and right away he died as a result. It says because of that, he turned away, and he became a heretic because he didn't believe in it anymore. One of the reasons, one of the stories that told in the Talmud about the personality of, about the story of Elisha ben Avuya, it's a famous story. And then, of course, the Talmud there in Chagiga brings the drasha, which is mentioned also in Kiddushin, in the name of Rabbi Yaakov. Then when it says Laman Yarichun Yamecha, when it says you shall have prolonged life, it means in a world which is a world of everlasting life, meaning in the world to come, not necessarily in this world. Because in general, the Talmud says in Kiddushin that mitzvot, schar mitzvot b'hai al maleka, there aren't really rewards for the commandments in this world. It's in the world to come. However, the Tanchum I mentioned before on this week's Parsha also mentions that story about the boy who was sent by his father up the tree and fell down. And Tanchuma says, no, the reason why he didn't have the protection of a long life is because he did it wrong. His father sent him wrong. Because it says, ki karei kan sipor. If it should happen that you stumble across a kansipor, a bird's nest, you're not supposed to climb up a tall tree to look for it. Besides, it's dangerous to go up a tall tree if it's a young boy. So the father did the wrong thing. It was a transgression in itself to set up his kid to do such a thing. So so he said, and the Tanchuma says, La lacha, you don't do that. It's ki karei if it happens to happen in front of you. You don't go far away from that. And then it's even his commentary in Hamek Davar also says, he also talks about this discussion, says that's the halacha. You don't go up tall trees and things like that. If it's a small tree in the nest right in front of you, because after all, both the Talmud and the Midrash refers to Shiluach Haken, to this bird's nest mitzvah, as an easy mitzvah. And if you had to go up a tall tree, it's not an easy mitzvah anymore. So we have two opinions then about Luman Yarichun Yamecha. The opinion of Tanchuma that it can prolong your days, and the opinion of Rabbi Yaakov that no, it's talking about war in the world to come. What about the next one? It says in Deuteronomy 11, Laman yerbu yamechem v'mei that your days be multiplied on the land that God gave you. And it starts off, Vayayim shamua tishmuel mitzvotai, if you listen to my commandments, then your days will be prolonged, your days will be multiplied on the land. So is there a difference between prolonged and multiplied? So the Talmud in Brachot, page 8, tells a story. Rabbi Yochanan, who was a first generation Amorah, Talmudic scholar in the land of Israel, tells a story about him. He heard Ikasavi beBavel. He heard that there are old people in Bavel, in Babylonia, among the Jews there. So he was surprised. How could that be? The Torah in Deuteronomy chapter 11 says, in order to multiply your days on the land that God gave you. So the land of Israel, when you do the mitzvot, your days are multiplied. But who says in Babylonia that's supposed to happen? So how can there possibly be old Jews in Babylonia? And then they told him that these people go to the synagogue and the Beit Midrash early in the morning and late at night for the prayers and to study. And then he understood, okay, that's also something that can give you a prolonged life. But it's interesting. So Rabbi Yochanan understood that verse in its simple text, in its simple meaning, that it will multiply your days, meaning you'll have a longer life. And for that one, we don't have another interpretation necessarily. I'll get to the third one now. The third one is in Shemot 23. And Shemot 23 also says, in the land, et mispar yamecha amalei, I shall fill your days in the land. Now, fill your days, what does that mean? It might mean something else, because multiply sounds like to make it more. Fill means possibly to fill the quota, meaning you're supposed to live a certain amount of days. Those days you'll fill the quota and they will not be shortened. That's what it sounds like, amalei. It might mean something else too, and I'll get back to this. Why it might mean something else? It could also mean I will give meaningfulness to your days. Yispar yamecha amalei, meaning every day will be meaningful. Because when you keep the mitzvot, it gives you a certain meaning to life, then every day becomes meaningful too. But I will not try to change it from where it says that your days become fulfilled. So it possibly means amalei, in other words, what you are supposed to get, it will not be shortened. That's very possible. But I want to go back to number one, because number one is the one which has the two interpretations. Yarichun yamecha, to prolong your days. It's either means to have a long life, like the Tanchum understands it, or it means in the world to come, you're going to get, or I'm going to suggest maybe both. In this particular case, specifically, for all the mitzvot, of course, there is reward in the world to come. But there's something specific about this mitzvah. You see, honoring your parents, and by the way, let's compare the two. One is about honoring your parents, and the second one is about honoring the parent of the bird. Remember, the mother bird's also a parent of the eggs or of the chicks that are in that nest. And it says, send the parent away first. Don't take it while the parent's there. She doesn't have to go through that aggravation. And remember, we can project things on animals too. If we learn to be cruel to animals, we can be cruel to humans too. So the Torah doesn't want us to project, doesn't want us to do things that resemble things that you should not do to humans. And yes, it might also be compassion on the animals, as Maimonides and Nachmanides say. Even though the Talmud takes a slightly different approach, but that is a discussion by itself. And the Zohar takes a slightly different approach, but I want to focus on this. So both of them are talking about a child and a parent. One interesting thing when we talk about the human child and the parent is that your parents you can honor in their lifetime, and you can honor also after they die, by burial, by the Shiva, the mourning period that we do, by reciting the Kaddish, the mourner's prayer, by doing things in the memory, and just by being a good person in your life, which is also credit to them because they brought you up. So specifically with Kibud Horim, with honoring your parents, it is something multi-generational, because you can do something even for your parents after they're gone. And it's also just as worthy. And the Zohar says, that the child's merits can also be meritorious for the deceased parents. Because after all, this is the child they brought up. So because of that, it makes sense that specifically here, it could prolong your life either in this world and also give you war in the world to come, because it's already multi-generational. And therefore, it makes sense that this particular mitzvah would be something which would prolong your life in two meanings, either for a world which is everlasting in the world to come, or in this world too. And about the mitzvah themselves, yes. They can multiply your days if God decides it. Remember the story in the book of Kings, when Hezekiah, the king of Judea, king of Judah, was told by Isaiah the prophet, write your will, write your will because you're going to die. And Hezekiah turned to Isaiah and said, why am I going to die? The Talmud turns this into a more detailed parley than we actually find in the book of Kings. And because in the book of Kings it says that Hezekiah prayed and he got another 15 years to his life. So you see that people can actually add 15 years to their lives if God deems it worthy. So maybe there is such a thing, that you can multiply your days. And it says even in the land, of Israel, that a Jew who's doing this in God's land, it can happen. So obviously that possibility is there. Doesn't mean it has to happen, no. Doesn't mean that somebody who died young is a bad person, no. It says, you'll complete the days that you were designated. Who knows how many days a person was designated? How many years? And mecha also means years. But what I find most intriguing is the one about the honoring the parents. That's specifically the one which is multi-generational. and you can do even after that pass away, and hopefully while they're around too, because that would be a big missing out, is something which they mention specifically about the world to come too, because we're all a long chain. The previous generations, the generations that will be coming, we're all a long chain, and we all affect each other. Shavua Tov, Shalom, Shalom.